Hello, everyone. I'm Matt Williamson. Everyone seems to be in good spirits. Weather's nice. Halloween's right around the corner. The Steelers are in a really good spot. And as we always do, here is, upon further review, a much deeper dive of the Steelers' victory over the Giants, 26-18. It's a little random, but there's some method to it. Average EPA per play. The Steelers were at .101 compared to .015 for the Giants. That doesn't sound like a big discrepancy, but it's a lot bigger discrepancy than the final stats showed. You know, total yards in the game, yards per play, a lot of that kind of stuff. It just shows that the Steelers are pretty clearly the much better team snap after snap. Now, here's the problem. The red zone situation was a problem for the Steelers. I mean, they end up with 4 red zone field goals compared to 1 for the Giants. Now, there were some circumstances around that, but that was one thing that kept this game closer than it probably should have been, without question. All right, let's get into snap counts for the Steelers. I didn't see anything that jumped off the page for me for the Giants. Out of a possible 65, Wilson, Siamalu, McCollum, McCormick, and Jones played every one. Dan Moore missed 1 snap. So, pretty usual stuff there. Van Jefferson and George Pickens each played 53. Freiermuth at 43. More on him later. Remember, he did play a fair amount of snaps, but there's some weird usage still with him. Najee at 38. Austin at 38. Washington at 29, Warren at 26, 14 for both Pruitt and Hayward, 2 tight ends. Scotty Miller with 10, 4 for Brandon Johnson, 1 for Ward, Calvin Anderson, Minka, and Rodney Williams. Now on defense, there's a possible 72. Porter, Queen, Fitzpatrick, Dante Jackson didn't miss a snap. Watt only missed 3. That's pretty remarkable, to be honest with you. That is a high percentage of snaps for TJ Watt. And Highsmith wasn't that far off. He played 64. Bishop was out there for 60. Teams are attacking the Steelers in nickel. We'll get to that later in the week. Deshaun Elliott, 54. Cam and Ogunjobi, 49 apiece. 36 for Benton. 30 for Peyton Wilson, 24 for Landon Roberts, KZ 19. Didn't really show up huge to what I saw, but Edmonds for 18, Loudermilk for 12, Dean Lowry for 9, Moon for 7, and Adeniji for 4. Nothing super startling in terms of snap count stuff, but some of this usage stuff we'll get to, not startling, but noteworthy and something to really pay attention to. This episode is brought to you by BetOnline, the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything football. From the NFL to college, BetOnline is every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads while the games are being played. When the game's over, head over to the online casino and get on the game of blackjack or poker, or unwind with one of over 150 slot games. Head to the website today and use promo code BELIEVE, all caps, BLEAV, and get in on the action. Bet online. The game starts here. As I usually do, I've got a bunch of news and notes, but I have them pretty well organized so we can kind of stay with themes here. And based on expected points added per drive, the best offensive performance of the year was last week, Game 7 with Wilson. Second best performance, Week 8 with Wilson. Pretty clear who the better option is at this point. Now, we talked about red zone field goals. There was 4 for the Steelers, 1 by the Giants. But the Steelers did reach the red zone 4 times, compared to only 1 by New York. So they consistently moved the ball, and the Steelers' drives were a lot longer on average. They were 60-yard drives as opposed to 30 or 40-yard drives. The Steelers moved the sticks on first downs, got a first down on first down 28% of the time. That's a very high number and a big difference from previous years or Matt Canada time. Getting first downs on first downs really isn't easy to do in this league that consistently, well over a quarter of the time. The Steelers had 4 more explosive passing plays of 20 or more yards against the Giants after posting 5 such plays against the Jets, giving them 9 in the passing game in the past 2 weeks. Pretty crazy. Steelers also had 6 runs of 10 yards or more. They had 19 total plays of 10-plus yards, their season high, and tied for 6th most by any team in a game this season. They had 5 plays of 20-plus yards, including 4 completions from Wilson, all to different players. The explosives in this game were just tremendous. I mean, they really, really were. Now, Tomlin said something along the lines, I think his exact quote was, "Austin has been close," Calvin Austin. And watching the tape, that's definitely true. As a receiver, there was a lot of times, not picking on Fields, that Austin was open and just didn't get the ball, or a tackle away from making a big play. Didn't hit. That was very true as a punt returner before this. And stick with it long enough and you have his explosive skills, eventually you're not close anymore and you start breaking out. That doesn't mean he'll keep up, but yeah, it certainly has been the case. You guys know this, but I just threw it in here anyways. Just a Pickens note. He really had 2 tight ends or 2 touchdowns that didn't count. Nearly basically didn't count. But I was doing a fantasy show this morning, and it was pointed out to me, and it didn't shock me one bit, that Pickens has way more fantasy points that basically were unrealized. A defensive pass interference call deep downfield, a tight end brought back or a touchdown brought back because of holding. Way more than any fantasy player in the league. Like, it's not even close. So, like, his stat line, is my point, is very unreflective of what he's actually produced. We talked about Freiermuth. Now, he played a lot of snaps. I'd like to see his target stuff go up. I mean, he's not had more than 3 targets in a game since week 4 and only has 1 game this season with more than 4 receptions. I mean, shouldn't he be a 6 target a game guy? But one of the issues, and this is going back to when Pruitt was before his injury, wasn't used at all in 12 personnel. 1 running back, 2 tight ends, 2 receivers. Pat Freiermuth is not part of that package. It's working, but that makes me question things a little. That being said, another tight end, Washington, is absolutely one of the most important players on this offense and is really improved. And he was phenomenal this week in all facets. He was really, really good. I thought this was a really nice outing again for Dan Moore, but the right side of the offensive line had a tough time. Jones is so all over the place, and McCormick just didn't have a great game, often against Lawrence, so it's somewhat understandable. And it shocked me. It's easy to say just double Lawrence every play. And in a way you can do that. But they singled him more often than I was comfortable with on second view. And when they did, he caused problems. He's that good a player. Speaking of Giants, I thought Tracy, Neighbors, and Slayton were all very impressive and are all really good players. Tracy averaged 7.3 yards per carry. And I think more that I watched this, 2 of the Steelers' goals were realized. Don't let Neighbors get behind you. They didn't do that. And I think they were really focused on Jones as a runner. Almost in a Michelob Ultra Lamar way of playing defense. And I think in a way they underestimated Tracy. They focused on Jones as a runner who only had 3 rushing attempts for 1 yard. So they accomplished that, and they accomplished not allowing Neighbors over the top, and they accomplished getting a victory. But I do think they underestimated the damage Tracy could do. This is a trend. We'll talk about this probably more later in the week, but more so than usual for the Giants, all 3 of their receivers with Wan'Dale Robinson got a lot of snaps. A lot of snaps for all 3 receivers. And what teams are doing with a lot of success against Pittsburgh is getting them in nickel, get Benton off the field, get Wilson and Queen at linebacker, and running up the middle. And that's something they need to spend some time on during the bye week to get fixed. Yet, big picture, this is more of an off-season situation. Is Benton really a nose? I think I would rather add a nose type. Doesn't be Casey Hampton phone booth guy, but a bigger body, and make Benton more of an end, more of a cam. Wasn't his best day, Benton. And that's also true for Ogunjobi. I thought he had a tough day, especially against a run. And uncharacteristically, this was probably Elliott's worst day in a Steeler uniform. I'm not worried about him. Also wasn't Jackson's best game. And I think it was pretty clear that that was the corner they wanted to pick on most on the outside, with pretty good success, actually. So Neighbors ran 100% of the routes, had 12 targets. He's one of the most targeted players in the league, 161 air yards. But in the end, he didn't kill you. He didn't have 10 for 145 and 2 touchdowns. And I think that was a big part of the game plan was if Neighbors nickels and dimes us to death, I can live with it. But if he beats us with huge plays, I cannot. Injuries. Doesn't look like anything serious from this game, but we didn't mention this because it happened between podcasts, but Roman Wilson's on injured reserve with a hamstring injury. Doesn't mean he's done for the year, but that's at least 4 games. At that point, might the Steelers have traded for another receiver? More on that later this week. And once again, he's going to have to try to get on a moving train and can't practice any of that time anyway. So it feels more and more and more and more like this is a wasted's a wrong word, but wasted rookie year. Should have mentioned this probably more going into this game, but 5 of the Giants' 7 opponents before this week, they had held to 21 points or less. It's a pretty good defense. So in the 259 net passing yards the Steelers accumulated was easily the most against the Giants this year, who entered this game leading the NFL in sacks. So this is a better pass defense and better defense overall than certainly the Giants' record indicates. How about this? Bosworth is on pace right now to kick the most field goals in NFL history. Adds up. Would you consider Dylan Cook for Jones at right tackle? I think Cook's going to start practicing. I don't think I would, because I think you could kind of ruin what you have in Jones and you could lose him completely. But behind the closed doors, in the O-line room, maybe some practices, I might start giving him a first-team rep or 2 just to kind of light a fire under Jones that, hey, you do have competition. All right, here's some next-gen stats that are pretty in-depth and pretty interesting to me. Alex Highsmith generated a career-high 12 pressures, career-high, and 2 sacks on just 38 pass rushes, with 11 pressures and a sack coming against Chris Hubbard, who was signed off the Niners practice squad 10 days ago and isn't a left tackle. Highsmith recorded 6 pressures in under 2.5 seconds. His 6th game over the last 3 seasons with 5 or more quick pressures. Only Myles Garrett and Micah Parsons have more games with 5+ quick pressures since 2022. Myles Garrett and Micah Parsons. TJ finished with four quarterback pressures, including 2 sacks. on 39 pass rushing snaps. He earned an 86.6 Pro Football Focus overall grade after the first review of that game. That's a massive number for them. That was his fourth forced fumble of the season, tying him with Fred Warner for lead. Najee, just a couple of more things here. Najee totaled 114 yards on 19 carries, generating positive EPA on over half of his rush attempts. That's hard to do. Harris accomplished plus 38 rushing yards over expected. So like the average back would have had 38 less yards than he did. The fourth most in a game in his career. He also averaged 3.1 yards before contact per carry, the most in a game before his career, for his entire career. Russell Wilson completed 7 of his 8 passes attempted against man coverage for 142 yards and a touchdown, generating a plus 33.8 completion percentage over expected. Wilson's 152 yards were his most against man coverage since leaving the Seahawks in 2022. Overall, Wilson threw only 2 of his 28 passes into a tight window, one of which was a 36-yard completion to Van Jefferson, the fourth most improbable completion of the season. What that means is where everyone is on the field and distance of throw, how possible is it to complete it? Wilson finished 3 of 4 for 108 yards and a touchdown on deep pass attempts. Pretty good. Lastly, per EPA, which I am a big believer in, Steelers have faced the easiest slate of offenses in the entire league thus far. That's pretty concerning. You know, do we really think this is a top 5 defense if they've faced the easiest group thus far? However, they have faced a well above average slate of defenses thus far. That's pretty encouraging. After the bye, the upcoming schedule is quite the opposite, subject to change. So take away with that what you willst. All right, everyone, this was fun. Over and out.